Welcome to the episode all about books and books with kids. And this is where I give you all of my inside scoop after leading book clubs for a year.
Let's keep calm and mother on. Mothering is way too important to do alone and way too serious to be serious all the time. My name is Christy Thomas and I am here shoulder to shoulder with you, mothering and enjoying life together. This is the podcast where you can focus on being mindful and taking a deep breath with me and learning new things so you can pause and savor the amazing life you already have.
So during the school year last year and the school year this year, I work at what's called a homeschool enrichment academy. So homeschoolers come to our space one time per week, and they're there for 4.5 hours, and then they switch topics during the time and have recess and lunch, all like the really fun stuff. But one of the fun classes that's at our homeschool academy, enrichment academy, is literature. And the idea is that I am to woo kids into the love of reading books. And we read chapter books together slowly, depending on the age group, a certain number of pages per week. And then we try out the activities in the book. And so that's what I'm going to talk about with you. I also do a story time activity for the K through 2 class because they're mixed age groups. And the secret for the K through 2 class initially is always to have some music and movement ideas, right? Like little bodies get wiggly. So if you're reading at home to a little kid, it's okay if they're upside down on the couch during a read aloud. They're really paying attention still. It's okay if they're doing somersaults. Okay. Your job is to use your voices as much as you can and to pick out books that are fun for you to read. Yes, there are some books that are super fun for kids to read and listen to, and they request them over and over and over. But initially, when you're picking out a good book to enjoy with the kid, the key factor is that the adult reading with them is enjoying it too. And that is super true, especially with that next age group of kids in the ages 2 to 4th grade. And they're really just in that training wheels part of beginning chapter books. Sometimes chapter books in this stage still have a lot of pictures. Sometimes the font is bigger. And our job is just to let kids enjoy whatever they like reading. So if you have a kid who really likes reading cereal boxes or toothpaste boxes, or they really love atlases but hate fiction, okay, you can read aloud the fiction to them, but let them read for fun what they want to read for fun. So I want to share with you all the different books I read this summer. And I'll tell you the ones that I picked for the school year for my classes. One of them is still up in the air, actually, now that I know who's here. But yeah, here we go. So for that lower group of kids, that 2nd through 4th grade type of reader, if you have a kid in that reading level, one of the books that we're reading this year is called The Lost Stone, and it's with the Kingdom of Renly. And it's a very beginner type of chapter book. Big pages, lots of pictures, small pages, big font. Lots of pictures. And what I like about this is that it's really obvious to follow the plot line with this one. There's an obvious problem in chapter 1 that carries through the whole book. The book does have a solution at the end. It's happy, but there's some, challenges along the way. In fact, in chapter 2, the prince runs away from home already. And so last week, as my students are reading this class, the prince ran away and visited a local school, and he was doing subtraction problems. So then our class did a bunch of subtraction problems together to act just like the prince. But here are the other ideas for that chapter, this age group. You cannot go wrong with the classic author E.B. White. He wrote Stuart Little. He wrote Charlotte's Web, and he also wrote one of my personal tearjerkers, Trumpet of the Swan. If you've ever had a kid that has dealt with articulation issues or challenges with communication, Trumpet of the Swan will get you in all the mom heart feels. The next book is Ways to Make Sunshine, The Very, Very Far North, and there's a sequel for that one. Ra the Mighty, Nim's Island, Bigfoot, Littlefoot. I really try to find books that are cozy places to land that also offer the friendship skills that I think kids at this age are still really trying to pick up on. So I really work on nuanced topics of friendship and teamwork and how to get along when I'm picking books for 2nd to 4th graders. The next age group of kids that I teach is 4th through 6th graders. And this group is like ready for adventure, okay? They just want books that are fast-paced. They want books that remind them of real life and kids like them. And they also don't really want things too scary, most of them. They are reading right before bed with their flashlights, or their parents are trying their hardest to get them to read books and to compete with YouTube and video games and all the other technology out there, right? So these books need to hook a kid and hook a kid fast. The books I read this summer for this was, one of them was called Roll With It. And it's about a girl who lives in a wheelchair because of cerebral palsy and how she adjusts moving to a new school. The next one that I loved, and I would read them as a duo, would be The Mona Lisa Vanishes, which is a nonfiction book about why the Mona Lisa is so famous, because it was stolen, and how it took forever to get her back. And then a fiction book that ties in well with it is a book called Framed by James Ponti. And it's all about two best friends and a thief who steals a painting from the National Gallery here in Washington, D.C. I'm trying to make sure I don't spoil anything for you. But seriously, if you are stuck and you're like, I'm not a reader, I just don't like reading books, maybe it's because the internet has convinced you that you need to read true crime books or thriller books, or you're stuck in like the romance genre and you're like, ooh, I really don't want this much spice in my life. Pick up some kids lit. We are at the golden age and it's phenomenal. Next, this one is a little bit creepy, so I actually decided not to do it because I was worried about the 4th graders in the book. But it's called Houdini and Me, and it's about a kid who lives in Houdini's house, and he has an injury, and then Houdini starts to communicate with him from the beyond. And it was fun, but definitely a little bit, I got the shivers, okay? The Fletcher Family. The Misadventures of the Fletcher Family is the first one, and then there are 2 or 3 more. If you've read the Vanderbeekers, if you've read the Penderwicks, both series that you should really hook onto, happy families, but real life. The Fletcher Family is a really good one. There's 4 brothers adopted by 2 dads. And it's just a charming, quirky book, very much in the line of Vanderbeekers and Penderwicks and Ramona. You can't go wrong. Okay, the next one, pie. Pie. There's a recipe and a pie contest and competition in a small town and a cute dog. Next, Love Ruby Lavender. It's about chicken thieves and letters back and forth in a hidden tree and a special grandmother. And one of my favorites when I was that age was the book The Borrowers, about people, like little sprite-like people who live in your house and like borrow your things that get left behind underneath your bed. Not creepy, but cute. Kind of think Fraggle Rock. Okay. Next one, the middle school topic. Now, this is where books can really get dicey for families. There are a lot of awareness of what's happening in the world when you get through 6th through 8th grade. And there's a wide range of lived experiences that kids bring to the books that they're reading. So one of the books I read this summer was called The Stars Beneath Our Feet. And it's set in New York City. And it's about kids that live in a poor neighborhood and they hang out at the community center and there's some gang violence and there's Legos, so many Legos, and friendship and hardship and overcoming at the end. Okay? Yeah. Okay. The next one, but it's not as intense as if you've read, what's the name of that book? Hang on. I've got to pause the recording so I can look it up. Okay. It's not as intense as the book, The Hate U Give or The Ghost Boys. But it is, there is some nervousness about police because the main characters are Black and they've had experiences before, and you'll learn about it. Next is a nonfiction book, it is fiction. A fiction book about World War II, but set from a civilian in Germany perspective. It's called The Elephant in the Garden. And this is one of the books that my middle schoolers are going to read this year in the second semester. And it's about an old woman sharing her life and what happened to her family after the Dresden bombing in World War II. The book they're going to read right after that one or before it, I'm not sure which one goes first in the second semester, is Maisie Chen's Last Chance. And it is about the first Chinese food restaurant in Minnesota and a granddaughter that has to go back home because her grandfather is sick and her mom have to move back to help. And so there's aging grandparents in this story, right? There's the potential for grief, but also there is some racism, anti-Asian racism going on in this book. And so it's a really good book. And it's a story of people that I hadn't heard of before. And I can't wait to read it with these kiddos. The book that we're reading right now as a class, it's a book called Fuzzy Mud, and it's by the same author who wrote Holes and Stargirl, Louis Sachar. He's written many, many, many books, and this one is about bioengineered fuel sources trying to be green. And it's also about a 5th grader and a 7th grader and some school bullying. And there's Senate committee hearings, and it's not one of his well-known books. None of my kids had read it yet until I suggested it to them. And so far, there's some tension in this book, but it's not like jump out of your skin scary. At least I hope it's not for them. But they are middle schoolers, so I know that some of them are watching scary stuff in their free time. And as they're watching the scary stuff, sometimes they eat pizza, which goes into the next book that I read this summer called The Thing About Triangles. And it's about a family-owned pizza shop. It's about parentification of a kid, a middle school boy who's just doing so much for his family, his first crush, and his crush is another boy, and there's just a lot going on, and it's very cute, and a good family, and normal kid things. The Thing About Triangles. The next book I want to talk about was a hard book to read because it deals with eating disorders, and it's written in poetry, so it's amazing. And I read it over audiobook. And it's by John Shu. And it's mostly biographical about him. and it's called Louder Than Hunger. Speaking of hard topics, another book that was really good was Maybe He Just Likes You. And it's about sexual harassment. And that's a hard topic for a parent to talk about, but it just has to be talked about. And if you listen to the book talk I did here on the episode with Carla Nomberg, just leave books around your house. Check them out from the library. Stagger them in every room. The way to help kids be a reader is to talk about what books you think are interesting, to ask them about books, to kind of expect that they're reading something, and then not judging if they're reading way below or way higher than you're expecting them to read. Just let them read. And if you can, convince them to buddy read with you, where you get to both read the book and then have your own private book club. Go for it. But if they don't, that's okay. You can read a book and then leave it in their pile and say, oh yeah, I read that one. We've all have shared book memories. I bet if you're in the same age group as me, you remember Number Our Stars and The Bridge to Terabithia and Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry, right? These bond us as a generation. R.L. Stein books and Goosebumps and Christopher Pike. But make time for reading. Model reading. Decide as a family that you're going to give a half an hour before bed or a half an hour before you brush your teeth to just reading. Make it an important anchor of your family's day. And if your kid is struggling with nonfiction comprehension or whatever thing is on the test scores, get some picture books and start reading those together again. Nonfiction picture books are amazing. Okay, well, I'm cutting myself off here, and your homework is to read as a family. Reread your kids' favorite book from when they were little to them. You've got this. You're exactly the right mom for them, and I'm cheering you on.